Now, David Rubenstein is here. He's co-founder of Carlyle. And we're supposed to interview him, but you're such a great interviewer.
You are.
Can I interview you?
We are going to, that's what I want to do right now. We are the Squawk people. We're in Davos. We come every year. We do this show. You're David Rubenstein. You interview across the board, business leaders, politicians, everybody else. Do you have
My question is, do you three get combat pay for having to sit out in the cold here? Does CNBC pay you extra for doing this?
No, but they give us all the gummies and pizza we can eat.
Yes,
really?
That's pretty much it. And the gummies right here. Would you like a gummy?
Okay.
Yeah, and the sun's nice.
And it's nice right now. David.
How many years have you been doing this?
You've been 20, I think, haven't
well,
you?
In one way or another,
21 years,
since the Wall Street Journal.
No, I've been coming 20 plus years, and I think I've been on air here for at least 15 or
and
15, so maybe all of them in some way.
Neanderthal man, Cro-Magnon man,
right?
Davos man.
But you like doing this, right?
Davos man.
What would you be doing?
Davos man.
Loud and proud.
What would you be doing if you weren't doing this? What would you rather do than this?
Nothing. Better?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Yeah.
What about you?
This is the thing I've been looking forward to in Davos. I came here just to do this interview.
Wow.
I came to Davos only to be on Squawk Box, so I'm really looking forward. I didn't know I get to interview you.
Cut that tape for the commercial break.
We're going to turn the tables
again.
You know
something, David, in getting to the actual grist of an interview with you, previous years, we've had a lot of angst in Davos. I don't feel it. I mean, I feel
You don't?
I feel it geopolitically. But economically, I feel like market-wise, I think we're in a pretty good. There's a lot of tailwinds, are there not, in the United States?
The U.S. economy, I think, is doing reasonably well. Inflation is pretty much coming down, not quite to the 2% level, but it's below 3%.
Employment seems okay.
Unemployment is 4.4%, tolerable. I would say interest rates are coming down. We're not facing a recession.
AI?
And AI is doing quite well. There are people that are worried about what the president's going to say tomorrow. When he comes.
Vis-a-vis Europe and
vis-a-vis Greenland. I think that's what people are talking about. A lot of business people are saying, look, we're happy to negotiate on Greenland. We're happy to do many things, but they're, not sure that the best policy is.
Tariffs were going to end the war. If tariffs didn't end the world, if tariffs didn't end the world or end the economy in the United States, I can't imagine Greenland's going to end.
Well, I don't think it will, but you have to worry about something or you can't be part of Davos. You always have to say, I'm worried about this, I'm worried about that.
Except when we weren't worried, and there was a patient in Washington carrying something from Wuhan that ended up being something to worry about. And we were on top of the world that week.
Well, that was a terrible situation for us, and I don't know how it came about, but it was a terrible situation. It slowed down the economy, and it really hurt a lot of people, and a lot of people died. Right now, we're not looking at deaths, but the president said we'll do it the easy way or the hard way. But I think actually the hard way would be negotiating it. The easy way would be the military, which is probably the opposite of what he thought.
And so what do you think is going to happen here? Because you're right, there are a lot of business executives I've been speaking to, that seems to be in the tip of their tongue, even though it has hardly anything to do with their business, except for the fact now that the president's talking about implementing tariffs here in Europe on those countries that don't want to play along.
I was just at an event and where the Secretary of Commerce was speaking, and he felt that probably things will get negotiated out at some point. I can't speak for him, but I suspect there'll be some negotiations on really things related to Greenland. Right now, we have the right to do militarily, I think, anything we want with respect to Greenland. So it's not a military kind of thing. It's really who owns the minerals and the valuable things there. And probably some people in Greenland would say, if you want to go in and excavate this stuff and dig it out, you can get some piece of it. So there's probably a lot of room for compromise. Remember, Harry Truman did try to buy it as well. It's not a novel idea, but I think it's upset a lot of people in Europe.
Well, Europe's in a permanent state of upset a lot of times if it involves Trump, and for a long time the United States as well. And they'll get over it. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, hopefully, in a militaristic way. Let's hope for that it does. But the issue itself is important, and it's important. Greenland is a strategic asset, and we need a closer relationship in one way or another, because we're the only ones that can really secure Greenland. I don't think Denmark can. I don't think Greenland can secure itself. And I think that China and Russia both have designs on Greenland.
What about Iceland?
Iceland it should be called Greenland because it's green. Greenland should be called Iceland because it's
But what do you think the impact is ultimately on NATO, to the degree you think NATO matters? I think there's a lot of people. We just had Senator Tillis on. He said that NATO is one of the most important things that's happened in the last century. And when you think just
70 years, yeah.
If you think back more broadly, just what the true implications are, given that Denmark and others have actually come to the aid of the United States over the years, and I would imagine if somebody called them and said, come to our aid now, they would say, talk to the hand.
Well, Denmark had lost a lot percentage-wise in in the Middle East and some of the wars we fought there.
Right.
So they've obviously been supportive of us. I suspect things will get negotiated out. That'd be my guess. I don't think we're going to go to war, but I can't speak for the country, obviously. But I do want to say that this is the beginning of the 250th anniversary of our country. And I hope every so often you have people on who might talk about what the country is doing, to remind people about what we did to get to where we are. When this country was created in 1776, it wasn't obvious with those 3 million people that we were going to be the biggest country in the world, most powerful country in the world. We did it for a lot of things that happened that weren't predictable then. Nobody could predict where we're going to be 50 years or 100 years from now. But the fact that we got here and became so powerful, and I think the envy of the world, is something you should talk about from time to time and bring people on who are not just business people. Bring a historian on to talk about why America is great and why America is doing some pretty good things, though we got a lot of things that can improve.
Question?
Yes.
If you look at where the last 250 years and the things that made us great, and you look at where we are now and the things that we're doing, if we had a conversation in 250 years, would this period go down in history as something that made America great, made us the envy of the world that you just described? Because at least here right now, I can answer the question for you, which is the people around here don't think we're the envy of the world.
Well, we have more immigrants in our country than any other country in the world. We have 50 million people that have immigrated to our country. No other country in the world has more than 7 million immigrants. So people are still moving with their feet or voting with their feet. Yes, we have lots of challenges, but we still are the envy of the world in almost every respect. And I don't think people are moving out of the United States in any big numbers.
I just think that I don't know who you're talking to over here. You need to talk to some new people. But I mean, we're talking about the stock market hits new highs almost daily. Maybe it won't anymore. It's going to be down today. GDP's at multi-year highs. It could be 5%.
Well, so that's what I'm asking. Let me ask David explicitly.
Why
do you
is the
believe
United States not the envy of the world?
Do you believe that what we're doing now?
Are you talking about Greenland?
Well, whether it's Greenland
or what else? Other mean tweets?
Whether it's tariffs, whether it's the changing
the law firms again, or
the law firms, media, all of those things.
Okay.
Whether you think that all of the things that this administration has done and is doing, 250 years from now, you will look back at this period and say, this is what made America great.
It was great until Trump,
If we keep
David.
the Constitution as it was written and amended, and if we retain our interest in entrepreneurship, we keep regulations at a minimum, and we try to do things that are going to help people at the lowest levels rise up, and the American dream is still something.
And do you think we're doing those things?
I think we can always do better. We can always do better. Under any administration, can always do better.